Is Trump secretly orchestrating these major events? Trump is orchestrating these major events, even if you're not in the United States. Since Trump came to power, the possibility of losing your job could arise at any time. Furthermore, the likelihood of you losing your job is not exaggerated, it's much easier than you might imagine. Why is that? Because this time, it's not just your company deciding how many people can stay, but potentially the entire United States deciding how many companies in your location can survive. You might think, even if the sky falls, it might not hit me. So, you might still feel these international events have nothing to do with you. However, if you remain unaware, you could face job loss, lack of money, and the inability to pay your mortgage or car loans. All these might seem like minor issues compared to the bigger picture. Because we are potentially preparing to face one of the most formidable, or consequential, U.S. presidents in decades. Art of Fortune. Greetings to all of you. Currently, most people see Trump's election victory. But very few notice that Trump and the Republican Party actually hold majorities in both the Senate and the House. What does this mean? Simply put, for the next 4 years, barring internal party conflicts, Trump essentially has full control over the United States. Therefore, what Trump intends to do will become the narrative the market uses to create money-making opportunities. For example, Trump supports Elon Musk. We mentioned before the election that one could pay attention to Tesla. A few days after the election, Tesla's stock surged 40%. But this isn't the crucial point. The crucial point is that you'll see, within just 5 days, over $2 trillion flowed into the stock market. It seems investors worldwide are scrambling to bet on stocks that benefit from Trump's policies. But in reality, these people are betting that other places will face significant hardship. You see, most of the policies Trump intends to implement will lead to inflation. I won't explain the boring details. Just briefly, for example, Trump wants to deport illegal immigrants. Consequently, difficult and unpleasant jobs will have no takers. And American wages are very high. If you don't believe it, try visiting the US. Even eating a meal requires paying significant tips. This means jobs that could previously be done by cheap labor, i.e. illegal immigrants, will now be vacant. So, you can only hire native-born Americans. But business costs will skyrocket. When costs rise, product and service prices must also increase. If prices don't rise, you won't make a profit and might have to close down. This will lead to inflation. Everything will become more expensive. But the problem doesn't stop there. The second thing Trump wants to do is bring manufacturing back to the US. This means even if you know that opening a factory in the US will be very expensive, you will have to go to the US, open a factory, and hire native-born Americans. How will Trump achieve this? I'll use an example. If I hadn't read this news, I wouldn't have thought of making this video. It's the recent story about Elon Musk's SpaceX asking its Taiwanese suppliers to withdraw from the region. What does this imply? In my view, Trump has always tended to pressure China and Hong Kong. You can see that since Trump initiated the trade war, the stock markets in China and Hong Kong have plummeted over the past 4 years. You can easily find news reporting that unemployment rates in China have soared in recent years and remain very challenging. Initially, I thought Trump would continue implementing policies aimed at limiting countries threatening the US's position. Only now do I realize that Trump is no longer the novice he was 4 years ago. If previously he focused on sanctioning China, helping the US make a lot of money, today, after 4 years, his target isn't just 1 or 2 places but the entire world. If the story about Elon Musk and SpaceX asking Taiwanese suppliers to leave is true and becomes a precedent, what are the consequences? If I were a business owner and my company was asked to leave its current location, where would I move? Many would say Thailand or Vietnam because costs are lower there. But remember, in the future, Thailand and Vietnam could also be on Trump's sanctions list. If Trump isn't happy, he could also stop buying products made in Vietnam. Trump tends to target anyone who takes away business opportunities from him, or the US. If I want to continue doing business with the US, I would have to move my factory again. Driving costs even higher. So, why wouldn't I move directly to the US from the start? Although labor costs and interest rates are higher in the US, they offer many incentives and subsidies for manufacturing, and these incentives are likely to increase. If I truly become one of their own, an insider, I wouldn't have to worry about future sanctions. Furthermore, with the rapid development of artificial intelligence, my factory might not need to hire many American workers in the future, saving on personnel costs. However, if I leave, a portion of my employees will definitely be laid off. Planned recruitment positions will also have to be cancelled, leading to an increase in the number of unemployed people. When my company leaves, other companies might do the same, causing the number of job positions in society to decrease sharply. This makes job competition fiercer. Imagine if the market initially had 100 job openings and exactly 100 graduates. Everything is balanced. But if my company provided 20 positions and now has to leave, the number of positions drops to 80. My 20 former employees will now have to look for jobs, making the total number of job seekers 120. So, the market goes from 100 positions balanced with 100 candidates to having 40 people unable to find work. Before taking office, or during his previous term, Trump once said that Taiwan had taken almost 100% of America's business opportunities and therefore Taiwan should pay fees to the US. So, are all these things still relevant to us? If we just let our hard-earned money sit idle, without timely investment or strategic arrangement, innocent people will become victims of this plundering or wealth transfer. I'm not advertising, but I genuinely hope you follow my channel and turn on notifications, because many important videos lose relevance if not watched promptly. If you're worried you won't act immediately after watching, you can like the video. It will be saved to your playlist so you can follow up and take action anytime. First, we need to recognize what Trump's overwhelming or significant victory in this election means. It shows that a large portion of the American people used their votes to overturn the Democratic administration. It's like choosing a partner. If you are unfaithful, always seeking novelty, you might choose a prettier partner with better conditions, right? Or if you are loyal, you will continue with your current partner. But if you don't need someone new, nor keep the current one, but instead choose to go back to an ex-lover, what does that signify? This suggests that Americans were dissatisfied with the Biden administration over the past 4 years. Otherwise, why would they choose to bring back a former president who was previously defeated? Even though many, including perhaps you and I, might see U.S. asset values soar and the U.S. economy performing well, Americans effectively said through their votes that their lives over the past 4 years weren't as good as they appeared on the surface. Many people to this day still think Trump is just a businessman, always associated with the label of someone who only knows how to make money. But in my opinion, after 4 years out of power, after being brought down, he has transformed into a true politician. What's the difference between these two roles? 4 years ago, as a businessman, his goal was to make money and help the nation make money. But now, as a politician, his goal is power. Power comes from votes, and votes come from the people. If Trump wants his family's influence, or dynasty, to continue dominating America, he must please the voters. The first step to achieving this is to target the wealthy class and redistribute wealth, redistribute the land, meaning tax cuts for American businesses. Hearing this, you might wonder, tax cuts target the wealthy? Shouldn't it be tax hikes? But think again, do the rich really need tax cuts? One of the accusations against Trump is that he evaded taxes. Even Warren Buffett once said that he paid less tax than his secretary. So, tax cuts are not to please the rich, but a way to coerce them. What does this mean? When you do business, if you want the tax cut, you must declare all income, whether earned in the US or abroad, and pay taxes in the US. Superficially, this looks like a tax cut, but it's effectively a tax increase. For example, Walmart has 78 subsidiaries in 15 countries considered tax havens. These companies controlled $240 billion in assets. But looking at their financial report for total assets, it's around $250 billion. This means $240 billion in assets are sitting in tax havens where Walmart has no supermarkets or stores. They make money globally but move assets to these places to avoid high US taxes, where the rate can be close to 50%, while in tax havens they only need to pay about 2%. Now, Trump says he will cut taxes. Previously you had to pay 50%. Now maybe only 25% or less. But in return, You must declare and transfer every dollar earned back to the US. This means if you previously earned $100 and paid only $2 in tax abroad, you now have to pay $25 in the US. So, while it appears to be a tax cut, it's actually a tax increase. From this, you can see Trump has abandoned the interests of a businessman to pursue the power of a leader. Businesspeople who support Trump now have no choice but to comply and bring their assets back to pay taxes in the US. However, in this process, Trump might provide some compensation for them. But currently, you'll notice that many US billionaires have left. So, what's the solution? The answer is to get businesspeople from other places to gradually move their business operations to the US. Therefore, I hope my worries are excessive. If I were Trump, I would require tech companies that depend on the US and want to continue doing business with us to at least open one factory in the US. In the future, if they don't come, I will stop buying their products or impose import tariffs of 10%, 20%, even 50%. Isn't this something that has happened historically? Every nation has ways to protect its interests, just as nations have historically protected their own. When a company knows that operating costs are high but still has to open a factory in the US, isn't this essentially transferring money from the wealthy, company owners, to the American people? Because this brings job opportunities to Americans, and that is precisely the redistribution of wealth. This thinking isn't because I simply like Trump. I am also a businessman and investor. I have long read his books, watched his shows, and admired him, but currently, he has no other choice. When you look at the chart of the US Treasury's account, which manages the budget as well as the cash they have on hand, what does this signify? In business, the most important thing is operating cash flow, meaning having enough cash on hand to pay your bills. For example, today you have a house worth $10 million and a mortgage of $5 million. On the surface, your assets are higher than your debt, there's no problem. But if you lack the cash to make the monthly mortgage payments, the bank will sell your house cheaply. They only need to recover the $5 million loan and might sell the $10 million house for just $6 million. That's why you need to keep a cash reserve to pay debts. If you need $1 million per month to maintain your lifestyle but only earn $500, or just barely $1 million, isn't the pressure immense? Similarly, the US government needs a certain amount of operating cash to maintain its functions. When Trump first took office, the required cash reserve was $350 billion, already much higher than before. But at that time, Trump launched the trade war with China, imposed tariffs, and collected a large amount. So, in 2017, this cash reserve decreased. However, upon his return to power this time, or heading into this potential term, that figure soared to $800 billion. This means maintaining US government operations is now twice as difficult as it was 4 years ago. Last time, he only applied sanctions against China. This time, even before taking office, he declared he would isolate the entire world. Imposing global tariffs is just the beginning. If he truly makes global businesses move to the US, can you imagine how much money they will make from land use, factory construction, hiring staff, and many other things? Even if the US says it will subsidize you, help you bring your domestic employees to the US. After these talents immigrate, they will marry, have children, and settle permanently in the US. This means they are tied here. They earn money in the US. But in the long run, they will also spend money here. Meanwhile, your country will lose talent. The number of jobs will decrease. And can the economy thrive? This is what we need to be mentally prepared for in the next 4 years. Simply put, today everyone thinks US manufacturing is not developed. So, the US will make places with developed manufacturing around the world transfer talent, technology, and jobs to the US. If you come, they will subsidize you. If you don't come, they will punish you. But the subsidies they offer might only last 1 or 2 years. After you have arrived, you will have to spend a lifetime in their country. So, often the problem isn't whether you put in the effort, but that many people are always being manipulated invisibly without even realizing it. Now you know. If we continue to pretend we don't know and don't reclaim our agency, or control, then I can only offer you my best wishes. To regain agency, the first thing we need to do is grasp the trends. Second, we need a system. Don't just earn money passively. Let a system of rules and automated cash flow work for us. Simply put, we only invest in major, clear trends showing strong growth potential. And when we realize we are heading in the wrong direction, we need to execute stop losses with the lowest possible risk. Finally, the third thing Trump needs to do is address the U.S. public debt crisis. Everyone knows that the U.S. owes a lot of money to the world. By 2025, large amounts of debt that the U.S. has accumulated will come due. How can this debt be repaid? The simplest way is to cause inflation. Suppose today you have $100. If inflation is 10%, the real value of $100 drops to the equivalent of $90. Similarly, if I owe you $100 and inflation is also 10%, then effectively I only need to repay you $90. That is precisely what Trump intends to do. He has publicly stated his intention to lower interest rates, pump money, and print more money, but doing so will cause the dollar to depreciate sharply. In that case, who would want to lend money to the U.S.? Who will continue to use the dollar? Currently, the whole world is talking about Trump taking power, causing the dollar to fall. You know it, I know it, surely Trump knows it too? As the leader of America, his thinking must surely be top-notch. Don't think you are smarter than Trump. Trump won't just pump money. After pumping, he will find ways to make the dollar appreciate again. In other words, after printing more money, the dollar's value temporarily decreases, and the U.S. will take advantage of this to pay off debt. After the debt is paid, they will make the dollar appreciate again. How can this be done? The U.S. has historically always used the tactic of devaluing the currencies of other countries, thereby causing the dollar to appreciate. Simply put, even if the dollar depreciates, if the currencies of other countries depreciate even more sharply, then the dollar is still considered strong. For example, let's take South Korea as an illustration. If previously a South Korean phone cost $1,000, the U.S. imposes a 20% tariff, increasing the selling price to $1,200. Simultaneously, the U.S. requires South Korean phones to use only U.S.-made components. And these components are 20% more expensive than those from other countries. Thus, to make a profit, South Korea would have to sell the phone for $1,300 in the U.S. Calculation note. Original text implies a higher final price. Perhaps due to compounding or other factors not explicitly stated. Based purely on the numbers given, $1,000 base plus $200 tariff plus $200 component cost increase, assuming components are 100% of base cost, could lead to $1,400. Or if component increase is 20% on top of the $1,200 price, it's $1,440. Let's stick to the text's conclusion price for narrative consistency. Meanwhile, an Apple phone, which already costs $1,200, maintains its price. When consumers want to buy a phone, they will see the South Korean phone is $100, using the text's $1,300 vs $1,200 comparison, more expensive than Apple. So most will choose Apple. As a result, South Korea, which could have earned money from the U.S., now suffers losses. This weakens the South Korean economy. Its currency depreciates, and when the won depreciates, South Korea will have to spend more money to buy components from the U.S. In other words, the price of the South Korean phone will continue to rise. If you are South Korean, previously you might only need to work 1 month to buy a phone. But now it might take 1.5 months. Even if you work harder, your standard of living doesn't improve, it just maintains the old level. Currency depreciation leads to domestic inflation. When the business performance of South Korean companies declines, they might have to reduce salaries or lay off employees. Meanwhile, American goods become relatively cheaper for South Koreans, and the U.S. can buy South Korean goods cheaply. U.S. inflation is thus magically transferred to South Korea, and the U.S. has completed another round of wealth extraction from South Korea. Do you understand? Previously, Trump applied a similar strategy to China. But China is accustomed to this and has countermeasures. Now, Trump is starting to apply this strategy worldwide. Therefore, in the next few years, many people will have to accept working more for reduced income while prices become increasingly expensive. Someone might ask, didn't you just say that Trump taking power would cause the dollar to fall and gold? as the dollar's alternative asset, would rise? So, has Trump actually taken office yet? Has he implemented large-scale monetary easing and money printing policies? Remember, although Trump won the election, it takes several months before he officially takes office. If you were Biden, belonging to the Democratic Party, would you sit idly by? Certainly not. You would use the remaining time to create difficulties for Trump, set traps for him to stumble into upon taking office, while simultaneously preparing for the election 4 years later. This is clearly reflected in the recent sharp drop in gold prices and the rise of the dollar. Caveat: this interpretation links specific market moves to political intent, which is speculative. Now, assuming Trump has taken office, or once Trump takes office, original phrasing is slightly ambiguous on timing, and even without announcing monetary easing policies. The dollar immediately depreciated, or is expected to depreciate, and gold prices surged, or are expected to surge. But if the dollar falls from a high level, the impact will be very significant. Furthermore, the Biden administration tried to entice the world to sell U.S. stocks and buy U.S. government bonds. If the Democrats had continued in power, they would need to address the issue of selling bonds. But now that they have lost, they no longer have to worry about whether bonds will sell. They themselves pushed bond prices down. Currently, even though the U.S. might be cutting interest rates, or has cut rates, bond yields are rising. This indicates that U.S. bonds are no longer attractive and are difficult to sell. They have essentially set a time bomb. Now it just remains to be seen whether Trump will defuse it or step on it. Many people invest based on gut feelings, without clear criteria, like searching for a needle in a haystack among thousands of stocks on the market. This not only wastes time but also leads to buying stocks with no potential, prone to depreciation, or even if they rise, they quickly fall back down. Therefore, choosing stocks according to rules and a system is extremely important. Due to time constraints, I will conclude here. I always share free information on how to become wealthy, be an entrepreneur, an investor, and achieve financial freedom. If you don't want to miss out, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video. I sincerely wish everyone who has liked this video will soon achieve financial freedom. As long as you find 1 or 2 useful sentences in what I have shared that help you live better, I am very satisfied.